Hello everyone, so I am going to be teaching you how to add and subtract positive and negative numbers. So positive numbers is what we're going to begin with, and the analogy that I'm going to be using is imagine we're playing Candyland or some kind of board game, and we have all of these spaces. And let's say like we roll some die or dice, I really don't know. And we get some number, right? And our little character starts here, and we either have to move backwards or forwards. So we can think of it as like a board game, and the method that we would be applying when we're adding and subtracting positive numbers is using a number line. So essentially, we're going to be thinking about space and direction. You can also use the idea of money. Like I have negative money, or I have $0, or I have extra money, right? Whatever floats your boat. So I have an example here. Let's do 1 plus 4. This line represents our space that we are in right now. And what's going to happen is I'm going to draw this. You can either put it, you can really put it anywhere you want. Just make sure that you have space where you're going, right? So this is just going to go on the number line. We're just going to put that down. And then what happens is we add that amount of lines. So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4. And then what we do is we count. But in what direction do we count? Because I can put these over here as well. But notice that we're adding here. So the rule typically follows that if we're adding, we're going to be moving to the right, or we're going to be going up. So then when we're counting from 1, let's count to the right or count up because we're adding. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then where you end up, like the last line, that is our final answer. All right, let's do 1 minus 4. It's important to note that in these example problems that we're doing right now, these are positive numbers. Just because we have positive numbers doesn't mean we're going to get a positive answer. So these are my orders, or my operations that I'm doing. I'm either adding or I'm subtracting. However, both of these are positive numbers. So let's make our number line and let's figure out where we're going to end up. What direction are we moving? So I'm going to put this 1 right here. And then unlike addition, where we move to the right or we move up, right? Subtraction means we're going to move left or down, whatever way you prefer of seeing it. And then the number that we are adding or subtracting, that's going to be the number of lines that we draw. So in this case, it's going to be 4. And since we're subtracting, we're either moving to the left or down, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then what happens is we count the number of lines there. But since we're moving to the left, this is going to be 0. And then this one's going to be -1, -2, and the last one is -3. So we're counting backwards now. We're moving backwards and we're going past 0 into negative number territory. And then where we end up is our final answer. So the sign, and what I mean by sign is these things right here. The sign tells you what direction you're going to move. You're either going to move right or you're going to move left. And then the number, like at the end, like in these examples we have 4, the number tells you how many steps or how many lines you're going to draw. If you want to look at it as steps, let's look at the example on the left, right? This is 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps. Note here is that it's not necessarily memorizing, right? I mean, you can memorize that addition is moving to the right and subtraction is moving to the left. However, this is more so about movement, right? So we can either move forward or we can move backwards. And we can move a certain amount of steps, forwards and backwards. All right, and then once you start adding numbers and you start getting comfortable, you start to recognize that things like 10 plus 5 or 20 plus 4 start to feel really comfortable because we're adding them to zeros. So here we get 15 and here we get 24. So once you start recognizing these sort of patterns, you come across problems like, let's do 9 plus 6, right? This is how I do addition and subtraction, is I break the problem down into things that I'm familiar with. So I know that 9 is 1 away from 10. So if I can get it to 10, that would be great. So then what happens is I'm going to break apart this 6 into 1 plus 5, because 1 plus 5 is 6. And then my problem becomes 9 plus 1 plus 5. And then I know that 9 plus 1 is 10, so I'm bringing that down. And then I bring the 5 down, and boom. So this is another method that you can use. However, it does take a lot of practice, or maybe you're already a natural at it, but I figured I would mention it just in case. So another thing I want to go over is when we have really big numbers that we don't feel like drawing a bunch of lines and figuring out what direction we're moving in. Let's take 27 plus 14, for example. So first, I'm going to work on this side, and I'm going to ask myself what 7 plus 4 is, which is not 3. That is going to be 11. And if you wanted to use the previous method, we could do 7 plus, 7 plus 3 plus 1. This is 10 plus 1, which is 11. All right, so then what happens is we don't actually write 11 here. We're going to write this last digit down. And then what happens to the first one? Well, the first one is going to go up here. And then we do this left side problem. So it's going to be 1 plus 2 plus 1, which gives me 4. So then my final answer is 41. Let's say I have 24 minus 17. It's kind of hard to picture 4 minus 7, which is -3, right? But this time we have 24, so it kind of makes it a little difficult to perform that operation right away. So what we do is we borrow. All right, so we have 2 10s plus 4 1s. That gives me 24. And then we have 1 10 plus 7 1s. That gives me 17. So then what happens in this case, because my 4 is smaller than my 7 and it makes things a little complicated, we're going to do this thing called borrowing. So this 2, we're going to be borrowing from the 2. So then this becomes 1 10 plus 14 1s, and it's still 24. We're just kind of rearranging things, so then this gets crossed out to a 1. And then how we look at it is 14 minus 7 is 7. We work through columns. So 14 minus 7 is 7. And then have this 10 and this 10 left to deal with, right? But notice 10 minus 10, well, that's just 0, so my final answer is 7. All right, so let's move on to negative numbers. So when we're working with negative numbers, there's these two, I don't want to call them rules, but just things to keep in mind. When we're subtracting a negative, it's addition, and when we're adding a negative, it's subtraction. What the heck does this mean? It sounds confusing, and I need to get into an example so you can see. Let's do subtracting a negative. Let's do 5 minus -2. If you can recall earlier when we were adding positive numbers, this operation tells us what direction we're moving in. This direction tells us that we're moving left. But this minus sign tells us to reverse the movement. You can almost think of it as it's almost like a Uno reverse card, right? But between two people. It's like it goes back to you, or it goes to you, or to someone else, and then it comes. So it's like the direction goes back to normal, back to you. So there's something still happening here, which is we're subtracting a negative number, but somehow it goes to normal. So then it becomes 5 plus 2. And we get 7. And we get 7 by applying what we learned earlier with adding positive numbers. So when we're subtracting and adding negative numbers, we sort of remember these little tricks that we have here and these little things. And once we kind of apply that logic, we go back to positive numbers. All right, let's do adding a negative number. Let's do 5 plus -7. So this operation tells us that we're going to be moving to the right, but this operation tells us that we're actually moving 7 steps to the left. So then what happens is that this just cancels out, right? Because we're moving 7 steps to the left, and it becomes 5 minus 7, and we get -2. Alright, so one of my goals is when I make these math tutorials, I want to leave you guys with some practice problems. And instead of me walking through the problems, I want you guys to get your hands on it. And then I'll give the answers at the end of the video. And then if you see that the answer's wrong, you can try to work through it again, but on your own, and sort of work out those brain muscles. So pause the video here, get started on these, and best of luck.